Okay, so you and I have had a lot of fun chatting about Campo's all-time Tri-Nations Rugby Championship team. So that's like over 28 years. He's picked a team that included 5 South Africans. And then the one that got us going was that he picked Cheslin Colby, wonderful player, double World Cup winner. He picked him in his all-time team. So I wrote a piece on the Keo blog and said, let's look at the criteria for a team like this. There's been 133 matches played by New Zealand and Australia. We played 129, and the Pumas who came in later played 61. The reason we've played 129 is because we missed the 2020 season where it was again called the Tri-Nations. I didn't even know that till I did my research. In any case, criteria being a minimum of 20 games, which is 4 to 5 seasons.
In the competition?
In the competition's history, okay? To qualify for your best 15 and then for my best 15. So that's kind of the criteria, and it's again, Campo picked a wonderful 15. They're all fantastic players. They're all brilliant. Some are World Cup winners. Some dominated the game for 5-6 years. But this is specific to the Rugby Championship, formerly known as the Tri-Nations. So I've kind of gone through the 28 years in my mind. And in my little book when I did my
Plug it, mate. Plug
Chosen 23, and you can find it in any retail secondhand bargain store. It now retails for $2.99. On this one specifically, I've actually got to do an update because this one came out before the 2023 World Cup. There may be a few changes to my best ever. But I'm looking specific to the Rugby Championship and to the Tri-Nations that was in existence from 1996 to 2011. So, Zels, we're going to run through each other's teams. Do you want to do it position? Do you want to do it, you give me your 15 and I'll give you my 15?
Are we going to tell them Campo's team or no?
Yeah, I mean, do we want to tell them Campo's team?
I don't know,
let me find Campo's team. It was somewhere in my notes, because it started all the debate. Where is Mr. Campo's team? Okay, so Campo had Chris Latham, Wallaby, at 15. He had Cheslin Colby at 14. Conrad Smith, Ma'ananu in the midfield, John Alamu on the left wing. He had Dan Carter, Joos van der Westhuizen as his halfbacks, and his loose trio was Kieran Reid, Richie McCaw, and Peter Steph Dutoy. John Eels was his 5 lock, Eben Etzebeth, number 4, Carl Heyman, number 3, Bismarck du Plessis, hooker, and Marion, I don't even know how to pronounce this guy, the Puma. We don't care about him, he's in there as a lucid. So Campo, politically correct, he threw one Puma guy in. I can tell you now that
he lobbed in a Puma.
In my 15, there's no Pumas and there's no Wallabies. I tried hard, mate, but I couldn't find any. Good team that Campo's picked.
That's a lovely team. And look, a little disclaimer here, whatever team I pick, I've got no idea how many matches these guys played in the Rugby Championship / Tri-Nations. I haven't done the homework that you have done. Well, so feel free to jump in and correct me on some of these blokes.
No, it's like Campo. It's solely your opinion. He clearly hasn't done his research either, okay?
The other thing I'll say is if you ask me for my all-time Rugby Championship team, it's going to be like a magic 8 ball. Every time you ask me, there's going to be some changes because there have been some incredible players to play in arguably rugby's toughest competition ever over the years.
Look, you could pick 10 15s, all different.
Totally.
And they'd all be brilliant.
Totally.
But they wouldn't beat mine.
Well, yeah, maybe yeah. I suppose it'll come down to on the day, are they playing in Brisbane?
Mate, it doesn't matter because there's not an Aussie unless they're playing against the Aussies. Although when you go back to when Jake and Eddie Jones coached that star-studded Brumbies, star-studded Barbar side, they played at Wembley.
Yes.
And it was really the best of New Zealand and South Africa. And they played against a kind of okay Wallabies team and they lost. So familiarity of playing together always trumps 15 great individuals. Jake White once told me that.
Profound,
he said. He said, the best 15 are not necessarily the 15 best.
Oof. Deep.
We actually said the 15 best are not necessarily the best 15. Okay, so...
You tell me, what do you want? Let's go. Why don't you tell us your team?
No, well, I'll get to that. Firstly, we love to talk about ourselves as the greatest rugby nation, South Africa. We are the greatest World Cup rugby nation. We have 4 World Cup wins. New Zealand has 3, Australia has 2, England has 1. But when you talk about the greatest rugby nation in the professional era, it is just, there's no doubt, emphatically, You can't dispute it. It is the All Blacks. In 28 years, there's been 28 titles. They've won 20. South Africa's won 4. The Wallabies have won 4. And we know the Pumas will never win 1. So 20 out of 28. Where we have won the winning spoon. The Boks.
Yeah.
The Boks have won the winning spoon 11
Put your
occasions.
fingers in your ears now, guys.
11 of the 28 years we've come last in the Tri-Nations / Rugby Championship. The Pumas, later rivals, they're up there with 9. The Wallabies 6. And on 2 occasions, the All Blacks have come last in the Rugby Championship. Previously, that the Tri-Nations. So it's not even a discussion point that they have dominated. And their win percentage is 75. And we're the next best with an Aussie like 43 and 42. Pumas 16%. So I could actually just give you an All Black 15 that dominated the tournament, but I'm not going to do that.
But that's what I was going to say. And maybe we need to take a little detour, because if you're going to pick the best, as in based on success rate, Rugby Championship team of all time, it should probably just be Kiwis. But let me just say, there has to be some context to the mighty All Blacks, because the mighty All Blacks geographically may be a long way from Europe, but they're pretty damn close to that place called Australia. And then they've got those islands full of some of the best rugby players on the planet just over the lake. Whereas South Africa and Argentina are pretty geographically isolated from the rest of the rugby world. And anytime you play away from home, especially in the old days, you had to jump on a boat for a couple of weeks. So the history of these records are impressive in New Zealand's favour. But there does need to be a little bit of context about some of the obstacles our guys potentially faced that New Zealand didn't have to face.
No, I hear you. I don't say I believe you, but I hear you.
I'm making a case for us.
Yeah, you are making a case. Like a guy, if you play someone 50 times, you're going to win at least 1.
Yes.
You can't then keep on saying, but they had the advantage of playing us at home.
No, fair enough.
Meaning in South Africa.
Fair enough.
Okay. And because of our coaches.
Yes.
I looked at the players, and there've been some incredible players. But some of the big names that I looked at also only played in the first 2 or 3 years. They were big names pre-1996. You take someone like Jonah Lomu. He would be in my World 15 every day of the week. As a left winger, he changed the way the game was played. He was a sensation at the 95 World Cup and the 99 World Cup. However, in the context of the Rugby Championship, and when he played the Tri-Nations, he only started in 14 of 20 tests, and he scored 4 tries. So if you're asking me who's the best competition winner, I have to give it to Brian Abana. 54 test matches, 21 tries, and some incredible moments against Australia, against the Pumas, and against the All Blacks. So that's the context that I'm looking at. I'm not saying I would pick Habana in totality ahead of Lomu. Lomu would still edge it because of what he brought to the game. I would still pick a Sonny Bill Williams at 12, but he hardly played in the Rugby Championship. So that's been the fun part of the exercise for me, is to actually reward longevity and reward players who you felt owned that space while they were playing for a period of 5 to 10 years. And then there has to be an exceptional player who actually qualifies just beyond the 20-odd games, because there just wasn't anyone better than him. And that's where I'm going to start with my 15. Christian Cullen. 24 test matches. He had played 51 on the trot for the All Blacks before he got injured. He would retire with 58, 46 test tries. But in the Tri-Nations, 24 matches, and he started 23 of them, and he scored 13 tries, which is still right up there in the top 5-6 try scorers. To me, the impact he made, the tries he scored, that 70-meter effort against the Wallabies, some of the tries he scored against the Boks, I just feel he is the greatest fullback I've seen in the Rugby Championship / Tri-Nations.
Yes. I don't think that's really disputable, mate. I think he's pretty clearly the best fullback ever. So that's a tricky one to really debate against. And I mean, I think it would come down to their record in the Rugby Championship. As I mentioned before, I don't know about these 2 other blokes. I'm a huge Eddie Jones fan, and Eddie Jones, his favourite player he ever coached was a guy called Andy Walker, who could play a bit of ball. I don't know how many Tri-Nations matches he played or not. He'd be a guy I would definitely consider. Izzy Folau was a game-changing weapon until they stood him down. And then Percy Montgomery was a points machine. So my choice would be Christian Cullen. But those are guys that are worth a mention.
And Latham, Chris Latham.
And Chris Latham.
Matt Burke.
Yeah.
Some wonderful players. So again, we go back to there are wonderful players, but if you just, for purposes of this fun exercise, when you're in the pub, when you're in the bath, when you're in the shower, wherever you are.
Wherever there's liquid
Hang on a
involved.
second. Did you know that Cheslin Colby's only played 9 games in the Rugby Championship and Brian Abada's played 54? No. And that's why I'm picking Cheslin. Because I saw him play last week.
Yeah.
So out of sight is out of mind. And the one thing, again, getting quite excited. So thanks again, Campo, for picking a team and just kind of building a bit of discussion before the Rugby Championship starts this weekend. The 29th edition of it starts this weekend when we play in Brisbane, where we've won once in 12 matches since 1997.
Everybody knows that.
Everyone knows that one now. And the All Blacks start off against Argentina. And that's the opening round of matches this Saturday. It's going to be a cracker. So that's why we're having this discussion. That's why we're having this debate. And we'd love to hear your teams as well. So kind of put them on X, put them on SA Rugby Magazine's Facebook page. You can even email me, keo@keo.co.za. And I want to see that inbox flood with your teams, okay? And all and everyone will not necessarily be answered, but it will be noted, all right? So Chris Latham was a very, very good footballer as well. We're going to get to the wins. Again, some incredible winners. I think of Joe Roth, Ben Tune, JP Peterson, James Small in his early days, Stefan Tablan, some of the impact he had. Who's that other guy that played for the Pumas? Albasteni.
Oh, yeah, Albacete.
I love that guy as well. Just magical feet. Brayton Paulser. Which winners are you going for? Because I'm going for Abana as my left wing over Big Jonah, purely because of his track record, his longevity, and his 21 test tries in the Rugby Championship is also leading the way at the moment. You know, Dougie Howlett, close. Joe Rokothoko. I mean, Julian Savia.
There's a million.
There's millions. I mean, so every team will look good.
Kiri and freaking Wendell Sailor were in the mix.
Exactly. I mean, just some great players there.
Yeah.
Matt Rogers, you talk about another one. Could play 10, could play 15, could play on the wing. Wonderful, wonderful players. But I've gone with Brian Abana as my number 11.
Yes, I went with Brian Abana as my number 11 as well, and my logic is this: he's the all-time leading try scorer for the Boks. I know we're talking Rugby Championship, but if Brian Abana is not good enough to crack the Rugby Championship 15, I wouldn't need to consider any other South Africans for this team. So Brian Abana was an outstanding finisher. 11 is arguably the position with the most competition because some of the sort of standout seminal talents from Southern Hemisphere Rugby happen to wear that famous 11 jersey. You've mentioned a bunch of them already. But I'm going to go with Brian at 11. A guy who sort of jarred the memory was Rico Gear. Again, I don't know how many Rugby Championships he played. He was a great finisher in his time.
Not enough, mate. Rico Gear, Hosea Gear.
Yeah.
He didn't play too many either. All right, so you going with Abana.
The bus, Julian Sevilla.
So we actually agree on Cullen and Abana. All right, so we got a Bok, we got an All Black in. Two of the greats of the Rugby Championship. Remember, 29th edition starts this weekend. We go to right wing. While I've been talking to you, I've already changed my pick.
I knew that would happen.
Who's your right wing?
So as soon as we started this thing, the first name that sprang to mind at 14 was Brayton Paulser. And that's because he was a game changer. I just remember that guy intercepting balls. He was a phenomenal talent. In the days before we ran a defense that hid little guys, he had to make his one-on-one tackles. I thought he was a superb player. I think he's grossly underrated in the history of South African rugby. He is not my choice, but he is the first name that came to mind. And yeah, there's a lot of talent at that position. The guy that I ended up going with, I kind of went with him more because I think he is a phenomenal talent and a great player. But from a more technical point of view, I thought he was excellent in the air and a great guy who could marshal the kicking game and added massive value there. I went with Ben Smith, the Kiwis winger / probably more famous for playing fullback.
All right, so I originally went with Ben Smith because he's outstanding. 18 tries, 34 matches, 85% win record. Also, again, just putting that in to let you know how good that side was, how dominant they were, because you put a Brayden Paulson in that side, he'd have 18 tries, 34 matches, kind of 85% win record. Just a great rugby player, and to me, one of the more underrated when you talk about New Zealand backs. Big and time. Over that era, he just had everything, and he used to glide. He was powerful. They tried him initially at 13. That didn't quite work out. Came into his own and was equally comfortable playing fullback. So Ben Smith was in my team. So we started bantering again a bit. And, geez, I tell you, it's the thing, like I said to you, let's try and pick position specific, because otherwise you're going to try and accommodate everyone. But Ben Tune and Joe Roth were just outstanding
Joe
winners.
Roth, mate.
Jeez, Joe Roth.
My goodness.
So it's again, I had to pick between Joe Roth, Brian Habana, Jonah Loma, and that's why I went Habana. Because he was a special player, Brian Habana.
Yes, he was.
And the longevity also of 54 matches. But on the right wing, I originally had Ben Smith, but I've changed my name to Dougie Howlett.
Really? Dougie Howlett, hey?
Try scoring machine.
What?
Hey?
That's incredible, man.
In All Black history, no one has scored more
Was it the
tries.
Irish connection? Because he ended up playing some rugby there.
It was just as we were chatting, his name came up. I remembered, you know, when you do these games, you think, I'm going to forget the most obvious one, and
he was a
someone's
great
going to
try
say
scorer.
to me, how could you forget that person? I'm going to go.
I'm surprised that you went with Dougie Howlett.
So I've gone with Dougie Howlett
Okay.
as my 14.
Yeah.
But as we said, host of just other wonderful players, which again illustrates the class and the quality of players and the quality of this competition. It is, I'm sorry guys, Six Nations, it's got it's probably got 100 years on us, but it's not the Rugby Championship, and it certainly wasn't the Tri-Nations. Not when you see the quality of players like that. And this one is going to be a cracker. 4 coaches that we love having there, not 1 and 3 that we can't stand, and some amazing players, some amazing new players coming through. So, but let's look at the history of who's been there in the midfield. Wow, 12 and 13.
Mate, Timmy Horan, Jason Little.
Now again, they were great players, but they didn't play much. They were pretty much gone by 99.
By the time it came out, yeah.
You know, most of you watching here don't even know who Timmy Horan is, but he was the best that Australia's produced, possibly ever, in that 12 jersey. But I still can't put him in. No longevity, mate. Ahead of his time. Because if I put Timmy Horan, I've got to put Donny Gabbe in. So who's your midfield?
Mate, there are not many names in my team list. There aren't many guys that are non-negotiables. Guys that I'll pick, I don't care what the reasons are, what the filters are, but there are some. And this guy is one of them. For me, he's probably my favorite backline player ever. He would be the first name on my team sheet when it came to the backs. I loved this guy as a player. I loved his vibe. I loved the way he played. I just loved everything about this guy.
Jesse Kriel.
It's Jesse Kriel. No, it's not Jesse Kriel. It's Tana Umaga, the All Black. They played him all over the place. He started in the wing. He ended up at inside centre. He played at 13.
He captained the side.
He led the haka. I mean,
He led that first ever copper against us
mate,
in a
this
great
guy
game
was something else.
where they snuck at 31-27 at the end. We thought we had Boks that game. We were the recipients of that first ever one, and it was explosive the way he led it. I thought he was going to pass out at one stage. But you know him so well. Do you know what his real name is?
Mate, I don't know.
Jonathan
Umaga.
Falefasa. Did you know his first name was Jonathan?
No, I
Jonathan
did
Umaga.
not. Of course I did not know
Huh?
this. No.
Yeah, you learn something every day. What did you learn today? You learned that Tana Umaga's name is Jonathan Falefasa.
Johnny Umaga, eh?
Yeah. Johnny Umaga.
There you go.
Wouldn't have sounded the same, man.
Not quite the same, mate.
Johnny
Wouldn't have made the
Umaga.
cut then. No, I
Okay.
just love that guy. So, for me, he'll be my 13.
Yeah.
And a lot of debate around who I picked at 12. And I suppose if we're looking at the Rugby Championship thing only, you've got to look at Ma Nonu. I think this will be a surprise to a lot of people, but Dukes would definitely be on my short list to play 12.
Have you picked him at 12?
I'm going to pick at 12 in my Rugby Championship team this minutes edition. I'm going to take Dukes. I'm taking Dukes.
Damien Delandy has made... It's not the Milton connection, though. It's not the
Milton
touch connection.
Nope.
Hey, it's
Nope.
no bias. It's
No
just
bias.
that you believe
No
that he has
bias.
consistently been the best for a long time in the Rugby Championship.
Yes. And him and Tana Umaga, I mean, she's two of the chillest guys ever. Power, speed, feet, hands. Come on, who's going to
It's
stop
not
us?
tiddlywinks, mate.
It's not tiddlywinks, mate.
All right. Well, I've gone with my number 13.
You've changed it again, haven't you?
I think I have changed it again. Okay? I keep on wanting to change it. You see, this is the great thing about this debate is just as you think it's a given, it's a gimme.
Yeah.
Someone mentions a name, you think, wow, they were pretty potent in their day.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back to 13. I know I'm going with that 12.
Look at you. You're quaking.
I'm quaking at my boots trying to find out these
Come
names
on,
again.
mate.
So, if you look at a guy like Contamponi, who was very good at 12, okay? So I got to give a Puma a mention. He was kind of very good. You look at Frank Bunce in his early days, him and Walter Little as a combination.
Little, yeah.
I love them.
Yeah.
If you look at, obviously we've spoken about Horan and Little. Wow. If you look at those New Zealand, Ma Nonu, Conrad Smith, you look at Sonny Bill Williams. But again, Sonny Bill Williams hardly played in the Rugby Championship in the context of his career. And when he did, he came off the bench a few times. For me, the combination that always stood out for me in the Rugby Championship was Jacques Ferrier at 13 and Jean de Villiers at 12. And I'm going to go with Jacques Ferrier at 13. When I initially had Conrad Smith, outstanding player, 32 matches, 81% win record.
Mate.
Just a fantastic player. But I'm also looking at combinations here.
Oh, here we go.
And on the inside, for me, the best 12 over a sustained period of time in the Rugby Championship and the Tri-Nations is our captain, lovable Jean de Villiers.
Wow.
Jean de Villiers.
I love it.
He's the guy.
I love it.
He plays 12 over 28 years. Him and Jacques Ferrier are there.
What a combo.
With Habana on the one wing.
Mate,
Dougie Owl and
your team's
Christian
getting
Cullen.
decidedly green there,
It
mate.
is getting green, green with envy. So, again, wonderful midfielders. I'm sure I've missed an obvious name. But it doesn't really matter because, Lukanya, Dukes,
Oh, yeah.
Jesse Creel, in between these two World Cups have been...
Trevor Halstead.
I like Trevor and Andre Snowman back in the day. Brahm, 12 and 10.
Devet and Marius had his days.
No,
Marius
Devet
had
and
his
Morris,
days. Yeah.
just Devet Barry, bone crusher
Yeah.
in defence. Maurice Joubert, 3 tries against the All Blacks at Ellis Park. That incredible try at the Gabba against Australia. But I'm going with Jean de Villiers, and I watched that highlights package of the 38-12 win.
That's what did it. That is what did it.
That's what took him just over the edge. He ran that incredible line, and he scored. And 109 test matches, or it was 111, I'm not sure. But that guy played 51 Tri-Nations Rugby Championship matches. 51, and he captained the Boks. We forget how good he was. We forget how good Habana was, 54. And so that's my midfield.
Beautiful. Cannot argue against it, mate. I mean, I could easily, if you ask me in 5 minutes, that could be my midfield. So, brilliant.
But Dukes is staying, okay?
Dukes is staying, mate.
All right.
Dukes and Umaga.
Okay. 10 and 9?
Johnny.
10 and 9?
10 and 9, mate. This is going to be contentious when we get to the 9. The 10 is a lock. In that you can't change this. This is the guy. I mean, any other choice has got to be based on a bias or a feeling, because the reality is that DC was the best.
Yeah.
I don't think you can really... I don't need to motivate it, and you can't really argue against it.
I mean, you can acknowledge the Stephen Larkhams of the world,
Sure.
Morné Steyn, who had a great Rugby Championship career. You look at Alton Flatley, Matt Gitau hovered between 10 and 12. But Carter, 556 points, 41 matches. He's the greatest 10 that's played in the world for me, with Johnny Wilkinson a close second. Mm-hmm. But in the Rugby Championship / Tri-Nations, it's not even a question.
It's not even a question.
Dan Carter.
It's got to be
and
Dan
forget
Carter.
the Anton Dupont, greatest player ever. Go and watch Dan Carter play in a real match. And win 15 players, and go watch how he played against the British and Irish Lions in Wellington when he scored 31 points. That was the complete game, not a sevens final at the Olympics, where you beat 2 players to score.
Correct. Yes.
That's for you, Jeremy, out there. Zels also believes Anton Dupont, great player, but not the greatest. Never be a goat.
Give us your 9, mate.
9 is, to me, the 9 is as simple as it comes, and it just says how amazing this guy is. Because I'm not picking Joos van der Westhuizen, he was great. I'm not picking Justin Marshall, he was great. I'm not picking George Gregan, he was great. I'm not picking Aaron Smith, he was great. And I'm not picking Cheslin Colby at 9 either. I know you want to play him there. Farid Dupre.
Yeah.
It just doesn't get better than me in terms of his complete game. Ricky January had a very good career also in the Rugby Championship, Tri-Nations at that time. But Farid Dupre and Dan Carter, a fantasy halfback pairing, my goodness. It's a dream pairing, to have 2 decision makers running a game like that. and the Cullen running a mock from the back with those winners, Dougie Howlett and Brian Abana, and then obviously that South African's midfield pairing. I mean, the more I say it, what a backline, eh?
You just made the case for how the All Blacks dominate this competition. Your team's full of South Africans.
Because if those South Africans were eligible for New Zealand, they also have a 90% win record.
Yeah.
So that's my halfback pairing. You said contentious with 9?
Yeah, so 9, the first, immediately when we did this thing, I said Fourie du Preez and Dan Carter. And then I thought about it. Fourie du Preez is South Africa's best scrum off, in my opinion. And I think he's peerless in the kicking game. And I think he was the guy that converted the raw power and technical expertise of that Bok pack into field position. Peerless in that department. But maybe I'm a bit old school in this. But I feel that there's massive value in a halfback who is a forwards magnet. If your halfback can get the other team's forwards to chase him around the field for 80 minutes, there is massive value in that. And the way he does that is with his mouth. You know, if he can engage in a little bit of banter and make a few comments that pull their attention off the ball and towards him, I think there's significant value. And I think if you can find a scrum off that does that, Faf's hair is not about style. He's just trying to piss off the other forwards. That's all it is. And I think he achieves that, Faf de Klerk. So, my pick at 9 is maybe not technically the best player ever, in the sense that I think this guy would probably defer to Fourie du Preez in the kicking game. But Georgie Gregan, mate. Georgie Gregan riled up 60 million South Africans for the duration of his career. And I think there is significant value in that. Great leader, won it at the highest level, and just a superb player. So my pick at 9 is Georgie Gregan.
So you've got a wallaby in there.
I've got a wallaby in there.
And he riled up about 4 million Kiwis and plenty sheep.
Exactly, mate.
He also motivated us when he gave us the 2-fingered salute at Ellis Park when they scored to go ahead, and then thank God we came back. Skinstad took back the kickoff.
Yeah.
We took it up. Bola Conradi, short ball to Van Egreef, 3:31 all. Boom, 33-31 Van Egreef. Great victory. We were 26-9 up at one stage at Ellis Park at an altitude. So it would have been one of the great Wallaby comebacks.
Yeah.
It would have been the comeback that happened in Bloemfontein many years later.
Yes.
Curtly Beale.
Curtis at the end.
It kicked that one. They were 38-6 up, weren't they? The Wallabies, and then they were 39-38 down. And then he kicked that last one, 41-38. So
he boomed that thing.
He did boom it, Bloemfontein.
Oh.
We're getting to the pack. So that's our backline. I'd like to commend my fellow selectee on a great team.
Yes, you
a great
too,
backline, and we think alike in certain positions. Others, we have our preferences. So when we get to number 8, we'll start with the loose forwards as opposed to the props. And number 8 was one I also gave a lot of discussion.
Okay, go.
So my initial thought was because I just loved him as a player, Gary Teichmann. But he only played 13 games, and he really only played in the first two seasons. Tatai Kefu I loved playing at 8. Finnegan was good, but he also didn't play too many games. It wasn't really a standout 8 for me from the Pumas throughout. There've been guys who've had the odd season, but I'm talking consistently. In the South African context, we've had a lot that we felt were going to kick on. Skinstad, when he started, you thought something's coming. Didn't quite happen. Joe van Niekerk went between 7 and 8. But it took him a long time to get there. Dwayne Vermeulen. And so Dwayne I put right up there in, okay, who has to beat him to make it, and why would he beat him? So I'm not saying I'm picking Dwayne just yet, but he's in my top 2 or 3.
I think you should just do your whole back row. Tell us the back, because it influences each other.
Okay, so I'm going to actually go with Kieran Reid.
You've just decided that right now, mate. You've just decided that as I spoke to you.
No, I mean Kieran Reid.
Unbelievable.
54 matches.
Get a load of this guy.
54 matches he's played. Okay.
Okay.
Kieran Reid, 54 matches. He was dominant, and he played against Dwayne in matches where I felt he was more influential, and he just had that longer career in the Rugby Championship to Dwayne. I'm going with him. Obviously, the one that for me will never have a comparison. I know others think differently, but the mighty McCaw, 58 matches. So he plays, in the context of, we always put him in when we pick our team sheets, we put him as the open side as 7, even though they have the different numbering.
Yeah, he's
the
the open side. Yeah.
So, but our open side is number 7. So that's the mighty McCaw. And then the close side flanker. So I'm not going with 2 fetchers. I'm going with a big brute. And it came down to Jerome Kaino. It came down to a Finnegan type player there again. A Pablo Matero. It came down to a lot of South Africans. John Smith. Not Vickers van Heerden, unfortunately, but I would have given him that for like team play. He always, I really enjoyed that oak. So having worked with him as well, he was just a salt of the earth kind of guy. Beautiful. But unfortunately, he doesn't crack it. Okay. It's down to 2 South Africans that I had to choose from. It was Schalk Burger or Peter Steph du Toit. And
at 7, at blindside flanker.
Blindside flanker. Okay. So again, I know they both wore 7 here, but just understand I'm going with an 8. An open side specialist.
Just say blindside flanker.
Blindside flanker, yeah. Okay. So please don't knock me on numbers and say, but that's not the number of a blindside flanker.
Yeah.
It's Schalk Burger or it's Peter Steph du Toit. And maybe it's because I'm a little bit older. I've seen a little bit more and I saw him in his prime. But I can't veer away from Schalk. As brilliant a player as Peter Steph du Toit is, World Player of the Year, incredible at the World Cup. There was something about Schalk Burger in his first 5 years that was just immense. Every time he picked up a ball and ran at Jerry Collins, it was worth paying the entrance fee. You just heard tremors all around the world when those two connected. And, George Smith, Phil Wall, great players. George Smith particularly good for the Wallabies. But my loose trio is Schalk Burger, Richie McCaw, and Kieran Reid.
That's beautiful, mate. That's a lovely back row. I mean, geez, how do you top that?
Apparently you're going to now.
No, well, I don't know, man. So when this thing first flew across my desk, my immediate impression, my back row was going to be Richie and Schalk on the flanks and Georgie Smith at 8. And then the selection committee dug into the data, and apparently Georgie Smith only played 10 matches at 8, doesn't qualify to play at 8 for me. So I'll start with open side because that's the one where all of these guys kind of go through. And I think Richie McCaw, the only guy in my mind that can really challenge Richie McCaw at open side, and this will be contentious, is George Smith. I think that guy was just one of the greatest rugby players ever. I think he's a phenomenal player. Longevity, excellence despite the changes in laws, and always played the way that he played all the way to the end. So if I have to pick an open side from open siders only, and I can't play open siders out of position, I'm going to take Richie McCaw as my open side flanker and probably my skipper of my team. And that rules out, for me, George Smith, Heinrich Brousseau, who was an incredible talent at open side, and Schalk Burger, because even though Schalk did play some 7, he did play blindside flanker, he was imperious at open side. He was a crusher over the ball at the breakdown, a wrecking ball. So if I don't consider him an open side, I don't think I'd consider him anywhere else. So I'm taking Richie McCaw open side. 8 was contentious. Like I said, I wanted Georgie Smith.
Who's your blind side?
I'm getting there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Georgie Smith, I wanted, couldn't have him. A lot of good guys there. Gary Teichmann definitely featured there. I was younger, obviously, at the time that Gary came through, and I thought he was an absolutely outstanding leader and a great rugby player. Kieran Reid for his success at 8, but I'm going to go with Dwayne Vermeulen at number 8 because that guy was a defensive genius, a bone crusher with the ball in hand, an absolute assassin on defense, and just a glorious athlete who was also an enforcer at number 8. And I think he was consistent and durable. So Dwayne Vermeulen is going to be my number 8. Richie McCaw's my open side, and my blindside flanker, which is equally contentious because Andre Venter was outstanding. I was a huge fan of Owen Finnegan. Peter Steph du Toit is a fantastic player. I'm going with the Sheriff, the original, John Smith.
John Smith. Now, he was an enforcer. Huh?
She's that guy, mate. With him and Dwayne in my back row.
Mighty McCaw's going to have a fun time.
The scrum-offs are going to be on the run. Yeah.
When we look at this and we see how many great South Africans we're including, how did we have 11 wooden spoons?
Damn refs!
How did they have 20 titles? We had 4 and 11 wooden spoons. How are we 16-2 down in the Freedom Cup? I can understand 23-5 to New Zealand over 28 years in the Bledisloe Cup. What I don't understand is 16-2 to New Zealand against us in the Freedom Cup. And what is unfathomable is it's 13-7 to the Wallabies against us in the Nelson Mandela Challenge Shield.
Wow.
So when you look at the class of individual that we are looking at and saying, for example, if you put a Jean de Villiers and a Jacques Ferry, if you put them in that All Black team between 2010 and 2017, they would be as dominant as Amar Nonu and a Conrad Smith. Because for them to be so good in a Springbok team that was winning 55%, at times 45% of their games during their career in the Rugby Championship, it just says everything about the quality and the caliber of the players. We'll get to locks now. And by the way, Rassie, we haven't forgotten you. We know that you did play in the Rugby Championship. You played some particularly good games, but your career, unfortunately, was also cut short, as well as old Razor's cut short. But you guys have you're right up there. Rassie, you're going to be right up there with our coach of the Rugby Championship.
Okay.
In about 2 years' time when you've won us a few more titles.
Yes.
Okay. And Razor, well, you win 5 titles in a row. You're probably going to be up there as well. So we haven't forgot them, and you can read all about it in Zels' SA Rugby magazine. It's a wonderful preview issue to the Rugby Championship. It's 29th edition. As we get down to the tight 5, the engine room where it all happens. Without these 5 guys, you don't have a game. Who are we going to start with? 5 and 4, 1, 2, and 3.
I mean, is it even worth talking about the locks? I mean, isn't it just de facto selections?
Well, I had Johnny Ilsey's ruled out because he hardly played, okay? Mark Andrews, also 20-odd games. I haven't forgotten him. Craner Otto was there, very good as well. They didn't play into the 30, 40 games. I looked at combinations again. Ali Williams individually very good. Sam Whitelock and Brodie Retallick. Now you look at that as a combination.
What was Sam's real name?
Samuel.
Oh.
51 test matches. He had an 80, well, close to an 85% win record. And the other bloke, Brodie Retallick, in his 40-plus matches, he had a 93% win record in the Rugby Championship.
Bounce.
Lucky bounce, eh? Good hooker. Now, you look at the impact they had, and I think of 57-0 against the Springboks in Durban, 57-15, 57-0 in Albany. I remember that game in Durban where I just saw Retallick basically hand off Earban he was on the charge and he gave him the old Hevo, and you think, wow, I would never pick Retallick ahead of Earban, but just the way he fronted every time and the way he played, and in New Zealand they always pick him ahead of anyone. So that combination would be very hard to go by. When you look at our current blocks, when you look at the Earban Etzebets, you look at Loert de Jager, even a Peter Steff at lock. But hell, for me, it don't get better than the original sheriffs in that second row. The original enforcer, all the way from Bluebell country, firstly from the Falcons, Middelburg High. Off he went to Toulon.
John.
Philip John Botha. Bucky's Botha at 4. Here's an interesting stat. Bucky's Botha played 29 Tri-Nations Rugby Championship matches. He has the highest winning percentage of any South African in the history of the tournament, 62.5%, when our average is in the mid-40s. The original enforcer, I loved everything he did on the field. Jimmy Cowan still feels Bucky's head on the back of his head.
Scrum off radio, mate. That's that. Bucky's owns it.
But Bucky's Botha, and if you got Bucky's Botha, and again, the guy who I considered in the mix, if we had to pick a bench, he'd definitely be there. Adani Rousseau, who won everything. He and Bucky's the most celebrated, and Brad Thorne, they're the most celebrated in terms of trophy hunters. They've won everything that they've played in North and South. But Bucky's Botha, and then incomparable, the best there's ever been as a 5-lock for me, Victor Matfield.
Sealed
with a deal, Victor Matfield.
That's exactly how I would pick. 4 and 5, Bucky's Botha, Victor Matfield.
And to me, that's not bias. That is just knowing our rugby.
Yeah. Exactly, right.
Into the front row we go. Woo-hoo, the engines.
Oh, this is what everyone's been waiting for, mate.
I'm going to start with a tight head, mate. And I really looked for some Aussie because I wanted to put a Wallaby in my team, and I was going to justify it by saying, you got to hand it to this guy. He propped up on the tight head 50 times to take a beating every weekend. You got to hand it to him. But I couldn't find any that went beyond 20.
For my mate Darren Reed, I had Ben Alexander in my all-time Super Rugby team. I'm not sure he's going to make the cut for the
29 matches, I think he played. Ben Robinson around. I don't know if he's lucid or tight head. I tried to put James Slip in, but he's a loose head on the bench. And he's there and thereabouts. But it's only name I kind of remember. And then the Argentinians, they will always make a prop.
Ewan McKenzie.
No, man. They would always make someone's World 15 for shock value.
Yeah.
They're not making mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I looked at Adrian Garvey was always my best tight head since 1992 in this best 23 Springboks. Adrian Garvey, he was my best South African there. But I do feel in the last 4 years that Frans Malherbe from Bredasdorp, Paul Boys I think he can lay claim to being our greatest tight head.
He's trying to decide if he's picking him boys or girls.
But I'm not picking him. I'm picking Owen Franks from the All Blacks.
Spot on.
And 45 matches, over 100 tests for the All Blacks. One of the biggest mistakes they made when they retired that guy before the 2019 World Cup.
Shocker.
He was the anchor.
Yep.
He was the tight head supreme. And New Zealand scrum has never quite been the same since they wonderfully put him out to pasture.
Yes.
As we want to go coast to coast, they didn't want to scrum. We were grateful and thankful in 2019. So Owen Franks gets my nod at prop. Who gets your tight head now?
I'm definitely going Owen Franks. All those guys you mentioned are considerations. Frans Malherbe is probably closest to the number 2 job there behind Owen Franks, but I think Owen Franks, his record in the Rugby Championship, part of a very successful team, is a bit of a no-brainer.
And give me your loose head, and then we'll finish with a hooker.
Okay. Loose head was tight. Obviously, Beast is a guy that played a lot of matches for South Africa and a lot of matches in the Rugby Championship. There have been some great guys. Wyatt Crockett's a lovely bloke from the All Blacks, mate. Just got to love his longevity and just his vibe. I liked Wyatt Crockett. I wouldn't necessarily put him in the greatest conversation, but I did enjoy him.
For conceding penalties, he wins it.
Exactly, mate. We've had some interesting characters. Matt Dunning slotted a lovely drop goal for the Waratahs.
Yeah, well, we are talking the Wallabies now.
We are talking the Wallabies. Yeah. So,
mate, are you running out of names there?
No. The guy that I'm going to go with as my loose head choice is one of the greatest South Africans to play for South Africa, one of the greatest Springboks, Osturant.
Okay, so you've, I think you just...
How many matches did he play?
I don't know. Well, we're going to give it to Os, okay? Yeah. I also wanted to go with Os, but then it was a bit like the Brian Abana situation and other winners. Beast, 54 matches in the Rugby Championship, grew into his own, became an iconic figure, and he gets my number 1 jersey. And he gets it because of the longevity of his Rugby Championship career, as opposed to us coming in, being out of the game for a while, and then coming back in for a couple of years, and then obviously starting and ending his career with World Cup wins 1995 and 2007, but then also getting that Tri-Nations win in 2004, which was special. So to me, it was between Os and the Beast, but the Beast got it in terms of Rugby Championship. If you ask me to pick a World 15, I'm picking Os for his career. But this is a Rugby Championship Tri-Nations team, and I'm picking the Big Beast to go on the loose head with Owen Franks on the tight head.
Tony Woodcock's a guy we didn't mention.
Yeah.
Ali Baxter, mate.
Ali Baxter.
Hey, Sheridan put him in reverse.
Richard Harry. And we didn't mention any of the Argentinians because I can't really pronounce their surnames, okay? Ricky, tell me, no, you don't want it, okay. We're down to hooker. Our final selection is going to be a hooker. And
easy.
I've been chatting for, mate.
Piece of cake, mate.
That's not so long I've been chatting for because Ahmad's giving me the old, hey, 43 minutes. Okay. Hooker. Rake, the old rake. There've been some outstanding hookers, eh?
Sean Fitzpatrick, mate.
Also, great start, but then gone by 99. Jeremy Paul, around for a long time. Stephen Moore, around for a long time.
Stevie Moore.
The guy, Creevy, is still around, okay? Mentioned another Puma there. What's it, the other one?
From where?
Ledesma. What position was he? Hooker?
Argentinians, mate. Come on.
Now, I love visiting Buenos Aires, one of my favorite cities. I love the Pumas team, but unfortunately, they're only later rivals here.
Very much so.
They got in here in 2012, played 61 games, 16% win record. They need to improve, mate. They have. They got the win in New Zealand. They won once in South Africa.
You are just trying to buy yourself some time because you are scared.
I picked my hooker.
I know you're working it out.
I know. Bismarck Du Plessis, fantastic. John Smith, captain extraordinaire.
Cody Taylor, that's who you're going with.
I'm not going with Dane Coles. I'm not going with Cody Taylor. I'm going...
Brendan Cannon.
I was thinking about that guy. But then Bucky sorted him out for me.
The way that guy took a punch was incredible.
And I'll tell you one thing
On
now.
the schnoz.
People remember...
You just saw his hair go like this.
People remember the tail end of someone's career, and then you've got to go and see some highlights of them in the early part of their career. And my goodness, that guy today, I think, playing in the modern game with the bomb squad kind of bench and that first 4 or 5 seasons, the explosiveness was a combination of what we see with Malcolm Marx now. And look at our hookers, Malcolm Marx, Bongi, they're great. They will come into the equation in the next couple of years. Okay?
Definitely.
But Kevin Mialamu, for me, was just something else. 54 matches, 132 test matches, but 54 matches in the Rugby Championship. He was just an incredible athlete in his early years, and he refined his game. And I think he must have looked at Bucky's Buerta and Victor Madford and thought, why can't I be chucking the ball to
Why
you?
can't I be throwing them the ball?
So there's just been amazing players in every position, but I'm completing my team with an All Black. I started with an All Black, completed with an All Black, but I threw in plenty Boks.
Yes, you did, mate. Kevin Mialamu is a great choice. The guy we didn't mention, Andrew Hall, very successful with the All Blacks.
Oh, come on, man.
Lovely bloke, good farmer. No, look, for me, even though all of these hookers we mentioned are great players, this is a lock for me. This is a guy I would pick every time. Bismarck Du Plessis. Absolute enforcer, machine, impervious to pain. Just an absolute unit in his prime. You could pick him anywhere in the front 8, basically. Machine.
How did we win 11 wooden spoons? Or lose to win 11 wooden spoons with the quality of these kind of players? And I know someone's going to say, when you're talking about Bismarck and we were joking about Andrew Hall, what about Carl Heyman? Carl Heyman didn't play that many games. He played such a big part of his career for Toulon. He went over there after 2007. Could have played probably Test rugby for the next 8 years and didn't. So that was kind of like how we went the Franks way. And that's how I looked at Campo and said, yeah, great player, Carl Heyman, but not in this competition because he was hardly here. So, yeah, you've picked a lot of Boks as well, eh?
Have I?
Yeah, plenty, but good Boks. Shows the quality and caliber of these players, and that's why this Rugby Championship should never be as weighted as we've won 4 titles. The All Blacks have won 20.
How many Wallabies are there in our combined 30?
Well, there's none in my team, okay?
And I got Georgie Gregan.
But I did speak about a lot. You got the only one that matters, George Gregan, eh?
There we go.
But we did acknowledge those great early Wallaby teams from 1996 through to
Unbeatable,
2000.
Mate. Unbeatable.
That's when they had the Bledisloe Cup 5 times.
Sterlo, there's a bloke we didn't mention.
They haven't had it for 21 years, mate.
Oh.
And it looks like we haven't had the Freedom Cup for a while.
For a long time.
I want to ask you an interesting little question.
Yes.
To test your knowledge.
I'm going to fail this test, mate.
Top 5 attendances ever in...
It's got to be that game between the Kiwis and the Wallabies. It was like a 36-34. I think it was like ridiculous number.
It was the Jonah Lama try, wasn't it?
Yes.
Right at the end.
I'm going to say a number here that it can't possibly be true, but 100,000.
It's close. It's the biggest crowd they've ever had was 109,874. And then the second biggest crowd, also in Sydney, 107,042. We're coming with 94,000. We played the All Blacks at FNB Stadium.
Wow.
There's another 90,000 over there and a 90,000 here as well. So, well, no, that's 4 in Aussie and 1 in South Africa. And then that's in the Rugby Championship. And then in the Tri-Nations. Rugby Championship, the biggest crowd ever. Again, Australia, New Zealand, 84,000. South Africa, New Zealand, 80,000. That's FNB. And then a 73,000, 68. So it's incredible how those numbers have come down in the last decade, of
Weird how the more rugby we give people, the less people come to the stadium.
come to the stadiums.
So odd.
But those two games, 107, 109,000 respectively, and they were two crackers. It was like Harlem Globetrotter stuff. And then, again, that fantastic finish when Israel Dag scored.
Is he Dag? We didn't even mention him.
It was John Smith's 100th, eh?
Sure.
And he was left with Maanonu's boot. As Maanonu made the gap, stepped him. John Smith always says, just looking up and seeing Izzy Dag going, and he's holding Maanonu's boot in his 100th test, and they're scoring in the corner to win the test match.
Wow.
In front of 94,000 people. I won't forget it. Smitty would never forget it. But fortunately, he has a World Cup winner's medal to show for it as well in terms of his career. But it's been wonderful chatting to you.
Awesome.
Enjoy the rugger this weekend. Keep on talking about who is the greatest team in your mind. This current generation that's playing, I think in 2 or 3 years' time, a couple of them more may force their way in.
Definitely.
But what today's chat did show me was we've got loose forwards in this country, we got locks, and we got centres. And we've got Brian Abana.